This show, and let me tell you something, Mad Dog is out of his mind. I mean, he's
hilarious.
He's never a bad day when you got Mad Dog Russo on the show.
National treasure, and I'm watching him do that segment, and I'm just thinking, like, he's going to hit his head on the camera. It's just a matter of not if, but when.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of my favorite segments.
Oh, without question.
Are you mad about?
Without question. And to hear that he had got somebody kicked off basically the plane to get upgraded into first class is one of the best stories ever. Here.
Got my little cocktail.
Yeah.
Got my little gummy.
Yeah, exactly. What are you talking about? Anyway, let's get back to football. The #1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, expected to make his preseason debut Saturday. Bears facing off against Josh Allen and the Bills. Their head coach, Matt Eberflus, says he wants to see, quote, a clean operation out of his young quarterback. And Williams, trying to get accustomed to the speed of the game, had some high praise from Matthew Stafford on the Up and Adams show. Take a listen.
Matthew Stafford is probably, I don't think I can name two or three quarterbacks that play the position better than Matthew Stafford.
Wow.
Not obviously playing right now. I'm not saying
42. He was 42 on the list.
I don't know how he's 42.
You're telling me he's better than Josh Allen. He's better than that.
Matthew Stafford is Matthew Stafford. Aaron Rodgers right now in the game is my #1 QB.
Yes.
Obviously last year he got hurt and things like that, so that's that kind of varies for the top 100. But
you don't play Aaron, you play Matthew though.
Yeah, Matthew's
Week
top
4.
2 in the league.
So, what do you think, Court? I mean, he's basically saying Matthew Stafford, most overlooked guy.
He's right, because we don't talk about Matthew Stafford enough. That's the true definition of being overlooked. This is somebody who has 2 Pro Bowls to his name, one of which he earned last year coming off the injury season. 0 All-Pros. We forget about him. There's a reason that the players voted him 42nd on this list, because he doesn't have the same sort of recognition as the younger quarterbacks who have taken over the league, the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, the Joe Burrows. Put some respect on Matthew Stafford's name. Entering the 2024 season, 11th in career passing touchdowns, 11th in career passing yards. This is somebody who, on a team last year that was supposed to be in a rebuild, got them to the playoffs, throwing for over 4,000 yards. We don't talk about him enough because there have been so many other great quarterbacks who have been ushered into the league at a time, really throughout most of his Detroit career, where he was just stuck up there in Detroit on a team that wasn't going anywhere and we forgot about him. This is going to be a Super Bowl or bust sort of season for the Los Angeles Rams because we don't know how many more years Matthew Stafford's going to continue to play. It is, I respect Caleb Williams' opinion on this because this is the players, we talk about all these other quarterbacks in the NFC alone. He should be talked about as #1 or #2 in the NFC, period.
We need to introduce Courtney to Dan Orlovsky. And someone who talks about Matt Stafford all the time. What do you think, Mike T?
I'm going to go with Dak Prescott, and not just because of the tangibles.
Preach. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Center him up and just let him speak.
Exactly. Someone that was second in the MVP a year ago. But, we talk so much about Jerry Jones and what's not happening with these extensions. And I think if you didn't have someone like Dak who could comport himself the way he was and tamp down the noise, and we talked earlier about what Aaron Rodgers does and is he insidious in the locker room, like Dak to me is the perfect personality and leader for this organization, and the reason they've had regular season success I think goes back to him and his leadership and the way he comports himself. And if it was somebody like a young Baker Mayfield, let's say, and you throw gas on the fire for what Jerry Jones says, it'd be impossible to win there. So I think they're very lucky to have Dak, not only for what he's done on the field, and I think that is been well reported, but I think his unique approach day in, day out, and his personality gives this organization a chance to function and a chance to be successful.
For me, I'm going to go with a guy that was involved with a trade with Matthew Stafford. I'm going to go with Jared Goff, right? A lot of people thought he was left for dead when he was traded from the Los Angeles Rams going to the Detroit Lions, but he was a part of that rebuild and a part of that culture that has been set there with their general manager, Brad Holmes, and also Dan Campbell. When you look at the last 2 years, over 9,000 yards, 59 touchdowns to just 19 interceptions, but he had this football team in an NFC Championship game last year with a 24-7 lead at halftime. So I'm going with Jared Goff in those regards, and we can't forget that he made a Super Bowl, even though they lost it when he was the quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams.
Wait, hold on a second. After that last segment, I can't believe it's not Brock Purdy.
I know, exactly.
No,
He's not overlooked. He's Vanilla Vic, and we're talking about him on the top 10
I've been a
list.
Brock Purdy fan. When Kyle Shanahan, when he came into the game versus the Miami Dolphins for the first time, and Kyle Shanahan didn't put the handcuffs or the shackles on Brock Purdy, I said right then that if Shanahan believes in him, then he must be the real deal.
I'll go with somebody that we don't talk about a lot. How about Geno Smith? as to start there in Seattle. Because I think about the guy who was a high second-round pick, had a lot of promise. This is a guy who got punched in the face in the locker room by his teammate. And people said he was immature to reinvent himself, where people thought he was going to be out of the league, now to be a starter in Seattle and to be a bona fide franchise guy there is great. 2 years ago, AP Comeback Player of the Year.
They wrote me off.
They
Geno
wrote me
didn't
off.
write back.
I love that. Was a great line. To me, guy.
Done?
No,
No. Why you say that?
I'm just I went to high school or I went to college. I don't know why I said it, but I'm just saying I don't know. I don't have a sense of urgency about getting it done.
Okay, I don't know what that means. And CD Lamb didn't like it. So John Machota from The Athletic posted that comment. I don't have any urgency to get it done. CD Lamb quote tweeted it with the letters LOL. And I will point out that Micah Parsons retweeted that quote tweet. So CD Lamb weighed in, Micah Parsons weighed in, Jerry Jones is laughing. This doesn't seem funny anymore. Like this.
CD's laughing too, in fairness.
That's exactly right. He's laughing out loud, but he's the only one who doesn't mean it. So, I mean, Dominique, you were not with us when we touched on this earlier this morning. Like, this is the first time that the impossible has seemed possible to me, which is that this doesn't get worked out. Like, these things sometimes can go sideways because they get personal. And like, I don't know. Look, do I believe it's still going to get done? Of course I do. Yeah. But I have no idea why it's taking this long. So, Nick, what is your reaction to everything we just saw and heard?
When we have comments that are unusual on this show, I often try to take a step back and figure out what the strategy is. And it's normally pretty easy to understand how someone's trying to position themselves and negotiate or trying to set up another team, or all that stuff is pretty obvious. Jerry Jones hasn't really made sense this offseason. The things that he said all the way back to the all-in comment, none of those things have seemed to be consistent with putting his team in a better position or consistent with what his behavior's been so far. So I have no idea what to make of this. I assume at some point they'll figure it out and they'll pay their best offensive weapon the money that he so clearly deserves. But they have never figured out how to handle the quarterback over the last, 8-9 years they've had Dak Prescott. So I don't know. It's just unusual, and I normally just chalk it up to Jerry Jones trying to be entertaining and trying to give us something to talk about and raise his franchise value, but not at the expense of pissing off your best players.
Yeah, and you made a point like this earlier, and I'll say again, if there's a lesson that all of us learn at some point in life, is that the worst thing that can happen in any business negotiation is to let things get personal. You can't take things personally. You can't make things personal, because that immediately distracts you from the most important part of it. But it's also almost impossible not to sometimes. And this feels like it's kind of gotten, or is at least getting, into that area.
And worse to that, Green, it's not going to stop there, because if I'm a Dallas Cowboy and I'm in the locker room and I'm hearing there's no sense of urgency to get CD Lamb, our first-round pick, led the league in receptions, been productive his whole career, high character off the field. Like, if you're not going to take care of him proactively, who are you going to take care of? And again, when we talk about, we could quantify the amount of money it's cost them, at least $7-8 million if they went back to the beginning of the offseason. And again, within the same division, you see the Eagles getting both of their receivers extended and signing Saquon Barkley. So going back to Nick's point, the juxtaposition of an owner saying that they're all in and they're not even holding serve with their best player.
What do you think, Danny? What can you tell us?
Well, they have had conversations. They continue to have conversations, and I do believe it gets done eventually. I could not tell you why it's taking this long. I think when you ask Jerry Jones a yes or no question, is there a sense of urgency in an active negotiation? Of course he's going to say no, because if you say yes, that's bad negotiating, right? Like, he's trying to get a deal done. So, look, I think it's we always have to take Jerry publicly with a grain of salt. Like, he is out to entertain. He does like to negotiate publicly, but I think Mike T is absolutely right. I mean, this would have gone a lot better for them if